The poor and the powers. In the past 4 decades, there has been an awareness that the church should be involved and make a difference in the massive poverty that has engulfed this country. But it is in the field of politics, of making democratic institutions work, that the churches have been reluctant to step out and speak truth to the powers. This is partly due to deficiencies in our theological paradigms. Wala po akong panahon to elaborate on this. But politics, simply defined as the art of governance, is at the heart of the first ever commandment that was given to us. Go forth, multiply, and rule over creation. We find that in Genesis 1:28. This is known as the cultural mandate, and this command spells out the twin tasks that we have in relation to creation: growth, that is multiply, and governance, rule over all creation. Now, we have had no trouble multiplying, but we have always had difficulty governing. The prophet Micah tells us that the doing of justice is at the center of God's requirements for His people, alongside doing works of mercy, which most of us do, and walking humbly with God. There is need to confront the powers, those subhuman forces that have entrenched themselves in institutions and keep our people poor and captive to an unjust system. So why confront the powers? I shall give 3 reasons. Theologically, Scripture sets forth a number of reasons why it is important to confront the powers if we want to truly help the poor. Number 1, poverty is perpetuated by injustice that is organized and embedded in structures. On the side of the oppressor is power, says Ecclesiastes. While power may be used for good, it is often biased against the weak and the poor. Isaiah speaks of princes who are companions of thieves and do not bring justice to the fatherless. At best, the powers are described by Jesus as indifferent. They could be made to respond to our petitions, but only by persistent and relentless appeals, like the story of the importunate widow. It is good to be helping the poor, but as in the words of Martin Luther King, we are called to play the Good Samaritan on life's roadside. But that will only be an initial act. We must come to see that the whole Jericho road must be transformed so that men and women will not be constantly beaten and brought as they make their journey on life's highway. We must also work for the transformation of the Jericho road. Secondly, poverty is a sign of dysfunction in the institutions of society. There need not be any poor among you, God tells Israel, if only you will strictly obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all that I command you today. You find that in Deuteronomy 15. Massive poverty is a smoke signal that the institutions are not working. Quite early in the history of Israel, Moses was commanded to institute safety nets for the most vulnerable segments of society, the poor, the widow, the orphan, and the alien. Structural rearrangements, like the year of Jubilee in Leviticus 25, were meant to prevent social imbalances, like the undue concentration of wealth in the hands of a few. Now Israel failed to obey these laws, which were supposed to distinguish them as a just society among the nations. As a consequence, they lost the identifying marks of what it means to be uniquely called the people of God. They lost the promised land, the temple, the monarchy, and a society ruled by the law or by the Torah. They were scattered about as exiles in strange lands. Israel as a nation dispersed and disappeared because of two major sins: idolatry and oppression, or the failure to love God and neighbor. Thirdly, advocacy on behalf of the poor is a command. It is not an option. To serve the poor is to get political. Inevitably, we will run into issues of power. Andiyan po yung salbahe na mayor o barangay captain o mga wedding lord o mga drug lord. In many countries, access to resources is not a right but a thing you fight for. For the poor to even have the minimum condition for survival. Inserting their voices in the public square is necessary. The church calling is to preach the word. That is true, but in such a way that it is truly a conscience to society, truly a voice for the voiceless. This is the functional equivalent in our time of this oracular admonition addressed to King Lemuel by his mother. Open your mouth for the dumb, for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend rights of the poor and the needy. This prophetic advocacy on behalf of those who are weak, those without a voice, those who are poor, can no longer be ignored precisely in a time such as this. Maraming salamat po, and may the Lord graciously strengthen your hands in the work of the kingdom. Salamat po.